Um, there we go. I'll do a little bit of an intro, give a little bit of background on RAID, and I can go a little deeper into that if you like. We do have a whole recorded presentation, which is on your YouTube channel. You can check that out now. As I understand it, today we want to spend a little more time looking at our AI aspects and talking about how we're approaching AI. I can give you some behind the scenes look into our thought processes around incorporating AI into managing the kinds of knowledge that we do for project management and what's driving our features and decisions there. Does that sound okay? I guess so. So I'll just roll with it. All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
And super. So let's get started. A little introduction about myself. I'm a career project nerd, I guess is the way to think about it. I've been a project manager, a coach, and trainer for much of my career. I've done some TEDx speaking. One of my favorite things is I'm a co-host of the Project Management Happy Hour podcast, which is a lot of fun. That lets us explore a lot of topics in project management and delivery. And I get to engage a lot directly with project managers because we have a membership where we offer some mentoring and coaching. And so it turns out to be one of my favorite parts of the whole podcast is that I get to coach. I do maybe about one a week is usually what the average is, but I get to work with a lot of project managers as they're going through their career and managing difficult projects or making a big career step. Into larger situations or trying to establish project management and organizations. So that's a lot of fun for me. Kolme Group is a company I started with some of my colleagues in 2017, and it's basically a small consultancy implementing project management tools and systems, which has been a lot of fun. We get to work with a lot of amazing large organizations, a lot of which you've heard of, so NGOs, global NGOs, things like that. And it's been a lot of fun. My latest project is called raidlog.com, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. It's really, we found a gap in the market and in tools for project managers, and we're on a mission to try and solve that. And I'm such a nerd about RAID-log and project management that I actually published probably the only book out there on RAID logs, the ultimate guide to RAID log. And you can go check that out if you want. One other word is that when I approach speaking about project management, I honestly do it from a place of humility because I feel like I learned absolutely everything the hard way. So I don't have all the answers. I can tell you all the things I've learned the hard way and things I've learned from the people that I've been fortunate enough to speak with and mentor with and so on. And I'm happy to share all that information with you today. Now, the core problem that we're going to talk about today is really this, is that if you're a leader in a company, right, you've got millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars capital budget allocated to projects that your organization needs to move yourself ahead, to upgrade, to stay relevant, to meet the challenges that your organization has. And funny enough, no matter how large or sophisticated or mature the organization, I get stumped looks when I ask a simple question. Do you know the top 5 risks and issues that all these projects have and how what you're doing about them? And it's a big challenge because I'll show you. Statistically, there have been a lot of studies, and statistically what we find is that more projects have problems than don't. In fact, the vast majority of projects are going to run into some problem, and we all know that. We've been involved in projects. And what project have you ever had that has never had a problem? Well, probably very few. And if you've had many, then you're a very lucky person, I think. And having a team that implemented project management tools, work management tools, what we've kind of realized is that PPM, that's project and portfolio management tools, these are really about the plan and not so much about execution, getting those plans done successfully. But there's an old school tool called a RAID log. RAID is an acronym meaning risks, actions, issues, and decisions, that as a project manager, project responsible person, that you can use to help your plan be successful. And that's really the point of RAID logs. The challenge is that from time immemorial, RAID logs have always been spreadsheets, right? You have one tab that has, you list all your risks and you manage it. And these are Project Management Institute methodologies. Prince2, I believe, has the same kind of method. And you're using these logs. Sometimes it's risks, actions, issues, decisions. Sometimes it's risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. But in any case, these are the things that you need to look after and manage to get your project successful. And this is really important knowledge. This is the knowledge that you need to manage as a project manager to make your project successful and every place it went off track. And from a knowledge management perspective, wouldn't it be nice to have access to all of the information from past projects of where they went off track and what they did to try to get that project on track, and what of those things worked? What of those things didn't work? And how can we learn from that for the next time? And that's a lot of what RAID management is. And the opportunity here is that there really wasn't an application out there that did this kind of thing. So, and I won't go too much into this because I know you guys want to see the good stuff for the AI. But what we did as an organization is we said, you know, we've got all this information, usually in spreadsheets across tens, hundreds of files in SharePoint. Let's put it all together in one application where we can view it all together, we can manage it, we can report on it. And from day one, we had a vision that maybe we can leverage some kind of AI to help project managers use all of this great data in the system about project performance and delivery and learn from it and help make it easier for project managers to deliver. So I'm going to stop there before I dive into the AI stuff and just ask any questions or anything on that so far. All right.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to foot stomp what Kim just said, because it's a wonderful thing. You think of a single document, a single spreadsheet, or a single list that contains all of these key items, and then it becomes a knowledge management artifact when the project is done. So it helps you keep the project on track, and then it's an artifact for future use. It's a wonderful tool. So I'm just saying, yay.
Thank you, Tara. And you know, one of our kind of our mission is really we want to help project managers and we want to help organizations have their projects delivered more successfully. And Marshall McLuhan was a writer some time ago. He wrote a lot about media, and you know, I think he wrote a number of books, and he's got a number of famous quotes. But one of the things he said was that something along the lines of, as you make and use your tools make you. And I think that's really true for project management, because the current cohort of new project managers, they're getting out there and using the most popular project management tools. They're using, and I'll throw some names out there, which you may or may not be familiar with. There's ClickUp, there's Asana, there's Trello, there's Monday.com. And a lot of these are based on a Kanban board. You have columns of, you know, beginning, you know, middle, end, whatever your process is, and they click and they move that task over, and it's all about task management. Okay, take it to the next stage, the next stage, the next stage. If your tools are only ever about tasks, like Jira is all about tasks and bugs and that kind of thing, if that's all your tools do for you from a project management perspective, you don't think about risk because it's not in the tool in front of you. So we're evangelizing getting these out there because it's really important. And as I said, as part of this, we really are looking at how do we leverage AI to help this process. And so let's dive into that a little bit. So I'll show you where we are and where we're headed from an AI perspective. Is we really break it down in our mind. When you look at AI, let's just step back and think about how are applications like ours or others that you might be working with thinking about incorporating artificial intelligence to make your applications work well. And honestly, and I'm going to share our perspective, not an industry expert. I don't know that anybody's too much of an industry expert at this point, but what we see is that the capability for artificial intelligence, machine learning is really going to be throttled. It's going to be limited by what data organizations are willing to share. That's really what's going to, because these models have to have data to learn, to do their thing. They have to have access to data to give you advice. And while certainly different organizations have different tolerances or different, I guess they have different policies around security and data privacy and protection, generally, this is what we're seeing is this is going to be the limiter. So let's start with phase one. And these are our phases, and this is the way, again, the way we think about it. And LLM stands for large language model. ChatGPT, right? It's really this large language model that's been fed all this training data, and it's really pretty smart. And you can get value out of it for your applications for your enterprise without giving it direct access to too much data. So, and this is what I'll show you today. This is what we've done with our risk generator. Is I can say identify risks based on a text. Here's my description of a project. Tell me what you think the top 10 risks are. Or here is a document. This is my project charter, and here's a couple other documents, the charter and my investment committee presentation. And I can give it a couple pieces of document, not too much. I'm not letting it into my network. I can choose what I provide to that AI model and say, tell me information about this. Give me an analysis. Give me a chart. Tell me what I should think about. And it can respond with really useful data, really useful insights based on the language model. It's not so much based on your data. Your data is a prompt. So here's my project description. Tell me what I need to look out for. The value is in that large language model. And that's really easy to do from an application perspective. It's accessible to all of us right now. Go to ChatGPT or OpenAI. There's a whole bunch of applications out there that are doing this right now, and it's really easy to get to and really easy to use. Phase two starts to get much more interesting from a value perspective to an organization. And that is that when you can say, okay, and I'm going to use our specific use case for this, but of course you can take that to any place else in the organization, is we say, okay, well, it's great that you can tell me some probable risks based on my description, but you know what? We've done this project or similar projects 10 times over the past few years. And I've got all of my RAID logs from all these past projects, different variations of it, slight differences, but we should be able to learn something from that. And so the next level would be for us to take all of our data that we have in our organization and use that to train the AI. There's a little bit of machine learning. So now this AI is trained, this model is based on our data in our organization for the specific use case. And so now when I say, okay, here's my project description, tell me what risks I need to be aware of. The AI now can go and look at all that past data and give me very much more, ideally, specific data about risks that I might encounter. So adds a whole nother level of value to the risks, to the data, whatever application I'm using, but in our case for risks, because they're very specific to what I'm doing. Now, if I haven't done this project 10 times, or if I've only done it once, then the value of that information is certainly limited. But the more data that I have, the deeper data that I have for this specific use case that I can bring in and teach my AI model, then is going to be so valuable to me, so I don't have to learn those lessons again the hard way. And then the next phase is an interesting one that I had some workshops with somebody who speaks quite a lot on AI, and he said, and he was talking about another level that you can take this up to, and I just listed it here as machine learning based on all of your organization's data. And the idea is that it's a constantly learning thing that is learning from not just the AI is not learning just from our specific use case data. It's not just looking at my past RAID logs or my past risk registers. It's this maybe sound a little scary, but it's monitoring emails. It's watching your Slack or your Teams conversations. And it can be smart enough to say, okay, I see a lot of chatter about this particular topic. but I don't see it in your risk log. Or maybe it's monitoring the news. It's looking at press releases and it realizes, oh, the vendor, the critical supplier that you're buying all these materials from just got acquired by another company. That could be a disruption, maybe raise a risk for it. So it's not looking just at our use case data, but out beyond that. And so that is that's big data out there, but that's another place that we can probably expect this technology to go. Probably not in the near future, but at some point there will be moves to go to that next level. All right, so before I talk more about that, shall we do a quick demo and I'll show you what we've done in RaidLog. So just to give a little context, this is an online version of basically your spreadsheet RaidLog. And I've got my projects here. And let's take a look at one of my projects. So I have a project, and this is a technology project, and we've tested this technology across many different kinds of projects. And we actually find that using a large language model is a perfect fit for this kind of thing, because large language model has a lot of experience. It has a lot of, I guess, it's been trained on with a lot of different data. And so it fits an idea, the model where I have many diverse kinds of projects. So in this case, I can say, look, this project involves migrating 1,200 email accounts from on-premise Microsoft Exchange service to Microsoft Office 365 Exchange online. And I've got some other project data here, but we're interested in risks. So I'll go to my risk tab, and I'm kind of emulating a spreadsheet with this, and I've got this button here, AI assisted risks. And what this does is this is a prompt for our AI model. And it defaults to whatever my project description is. And I've got up to 2,000 characters. I've only got 175. So I can even add some additional parameters. Let's say some other things that I think maybe the AI could find useful is that 15 customer sites across the US, there is approximately 1.5, approximately, if I can spell, 1.5 terabyte of data currently on servers in Washington. And I could add some other, let's say 20% of the workforce is based in, I don't know. And then I say generate risks. Now, this process takes about 90 seconds. When you're looking at a spinner like this, it can feel like 90 minutes. But what's happening is we're taking that prompt, and then we've done some prompt engineering. So we've got some things that we ramp that prompt in, and then we send it off to an AI, a large language model. And that large language model is now considering the knowledge it's already got, and it's going to generate some risks for us to consider. Now, here we go. So here are the recommended risks. And so here we've got a list, and we can look at each one of these. And so the first one is, okay, network connectivity issues and multiple sites across the US with many workforce based in Malaysia, reliance on stable internet connection we can end up with delays in migration process and business disruption if we were to get this risk. It will estimate probability of occurrence as a percentage, and it will score or estimate the impact and the score of 1 to 100. And it will even suggest remediation actions. And what I can do is I can go through and say, I like this one, I like this one, and I like that one. And our perspective is that tools like this, AI tools in general, are a great assistant to a project manager in this case. They are able to do the work of creative, which is based on their large language model, but come up with different ideas that I can think about, or it can review my huge archive of lessons learned or past risk data, and then it can bring that to me and recommend. But at the end of the day, I still am responsible, so I still need to use my human judgment to act based off of that. And I see, Bill, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, if you don't mind a real quick question, because I love the way the probability impact comes in. And I'm thinking, is the probability and impact estimates, are they coming from like the large model that this is using? And if I was feeding it my organizational data, it would seem to me to be more accurate because I would know how this worked in my own organization. So that's a fascinating aspect of that.
It is. It would be specific to your organization, and we can even take it another level, which we haven't yet, but you can add your own organizational data. So this is a Microsoft Office 365 migration, so it's an IT project. And if I do this project, and if my company is an IT consultancy, that's one thing. But if my company is 100-year-old, heavy machinery, heavy civil engineering company, or I'm manufacturing and I'm just kind of a older legacy company that might not be as technology sophisticated from a technology perspective, then maybe the risks look a little bit different. So those are the kinds of things that we're working into our models is, how do we consider different parameters like that? And if I don't know if how many of you have had a chance to play with large language models, but one of the really intriguing things that you can do with it is, in this case, I gave it a prompt. I said, here is my project, tell me what the risks are. But there's an interim step that can really help you out, and it's really fascinating, it's this. Here is my project description. I want to find out the top 10 risks. What other information would you need to know to help give me that information? And it's really fascinating if you go out to whatever model you like to play with and play with that. Instead of just saying, give me this or tell me this, say, what information would you need to give me this information? And it can and will ask you questions. And it might be bits of information that you hadn't thought relevant, but clearly the language model needs to really provide the answers or the data that you requested. So little fun little trick to play with there. So once I select my items, if I look through these and I don't like them, I need to give my project managers, my people, the option to go back and say, I feel like this is missing some things. So let me go back and change my prompt. And so I can click edit query, and I'll save us 90 seconds by not doing that, but I can go back to the query and I can add more information. I can maybe copy and paste my project description and my list of, deliverables, other assumptions that I made when doing my planning, and I can put all that information in there and run my query again and maybe get a little bit better informed risks than I have with my first go round. But when I'm ready, I just click add selected risks to the project, and boom, we see, if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see, let me sort these here. If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the ones that we just added, or maybe a few more because I've run this process a couple times on this project. And what we also find really important, as I said, it's great that AI can help us with this analysis. It's kind of that work of, okay, I've got to do queries, searches, look at keywords, all those things that it's doing in its black box neural network. But as a project, as a person using this, it's still my responsibility. This is still my project. I still am responsible for it. And the idea of using this to help me create risks is a tool to help me. So in this case, this risk was created by AI, and I can look at it, and I still need the ability to look at that and say, you know what? Loss of email functionality during migration, that's not 20% probability. Based on my experience, I'm going to say that's much more highly likely. And so I can make these adjustments and I can change my plan here. So I still have the freedom to go and adjust that. And I think that's a really important part of any AI-enabled tool right now is it's a helper. It gives you recommendations, and you need to be able to tweak and adjust those, because it's never going to be quite right. It's still just insistent. And in talking about this with one of my colleagues, he was a little torn on it. He says, I don't know if I should use this. Should I use this? Because it's not always there. It's really helpful, and am I making myself lazy? And in project management, we have this saying, and I think it's maybe more of a generalized management maxim, and it's this: is that if you can delegate a task to someone on your team, And if that person can do it 80% as well as you can, then you should delegate it. And I think that applies to AI as well. If I can delegate an analysis task, something, identifying risks or helping me score these risks appropriately, and if it can do it 80% as well as I can, then I should take advantage of that from a delegation perspective. Anyway, let's take a look at what we're thinking of. So you've seen a little bit about where we're at today, and I'll show you where we're going tomorrow, just to give you some context of, again, how we're, from a product perspective, thinking about artificial intelligence and how we use that to access data and provide value to our users. So we talked a little bit about the large language model. We've got risk generation today. Next, we're going to go on to risk analysis. So we had this idea that we use AI to generate the risk. But from a project management perspective, that's not the end of the story. I need to add a probability and impact. I need to think about, what are my response plans? Am I going to transfer, mitigate, avoid? How am I going to respond to this? I can develop a response plan. And more sophisticated project managers, they'll go and take the extra step to say, well, if I implement this response plan, ideally, my probability and impact, they go down some amount. So what is the probability impact before and what is it after? And then if I really, really want to analyze this risk, if it's a big critical risk, I can put some time and effort into quantifying it. So I've got this risk. What would it cost me? What is the likely loss of email functionality? How long could that potentially happen? And what would that cost my company? So I can put a dollar figure on this risk. And that, of course, can take quite a lot of time, a lot of effort, research. But what we're looking at in our next phase is, can we automate some of that using AI? How good is AI at, now that I've established probability and impact, can it now reassess once I have a response plan? And our initial tests are looking really good at that. And then the next step is, well, can we start putting dollar figures to these so we can start assessing the monetary value of these risks? And we're still working on that one, but that's got a lot of promise for us. And in doing that, we're going to be ideally pulling people through the risk analysis process. And then we're going to be looking at project constraints, because when we look at the standard methodology for scoring risks, we're looking at probability times impact. And impact is some scale from 1 to 100. But all risks are certainly not equal. Imagine a project where I have a contract for my organization's service desk, right? Everybody in the company needs to call the service desk, and they've got a ticketing system for whenever you need a password reset or a computer fixed or new employee and they need a computer. And they've got the service desk system. And we decided, you know what? Those guys are bad. We're going to get rid of them. And our contract ends on October 1st. And so we need a new system in here October 1st. Well, as you can imagine, schedule is probably the most important constraint of that project. And maybe secondly is customer satisfaction. We don't want to impact our customers. If something happens in the project and we start going off track, I might invest a little bit more money. I might put some more people at it. I may even reduce the scope a little bit, as long as October 1st, I can terminate my contract with the previous provider and I can start using my tool. And so now back to risk management. If I've got one risk that is has a very high probability and impact scale, but really would affect scope, and another one that has a high probability or lower probability impact, but that could potentially affect my schedule, those, even though this one may have a lower number, it might actually be more important. So we're looking at AI to help the project manager look at different dimensions of risk. Is it affecting the scope, schedule, budget, resources, quality? Is it affecting customer satisfaction, operational? Are there operational impacts? And all these multiple dimensions, we've had this capability for a long time, but that gets to be a lot of data for one person to sit down and try to figure out and run the sliders. If we can help automate that through some AI, now that starts to make that kind of a deeper analysis possible. And then the next stage, which I think this is where it's going to get really interesting for you from a knowledge management perspective, is we're going to start using machine learning. So we're going to learn from the risks, past risk registers of past projects in our risk generator. And then the thing we're probably most excited about is what we're calling smart lessons learned. So I've got all these past projects that I've got, and I've got risk, actions, issues, decisions, and maybe if we're mature enough, lessons learned. And I don't know what your experience is, but working with a lot of organizations, I see lessons learned in a couple formats or versions. One, they're not there, right? And we have the same problems over and over. We make the same mistakes over and over and feel the same pain because we really don't do anything about capturing or acting on lessons learned. The second level of maturity, and I just worked with an organization that did this, is they make every project manager fill out a paper form. This is our lessons learned. These are the things that went well. These are the things that went wrong. This is what we have to do. They scan the piece of paper into a PDF and they put it in the SharePoint site where no one will ever see it again. And that happens too. The next one is that can be maybe a Word document or, but again, no one, probably will ever look at it. Because if I'm a project manager, I'm starting a new project, am I going to go back there and see, where do I start in the SharePoint? I gotta find all these PDFs and no one's not going to sit and read that. And you need to make it more accessible. So let's say that you're really, really good. And let's say you've got a dictionary, you've got a database, a SharePoint list, whatever it is, and you've got hundreds, thousands of lessons learned from all your past projects. That's a lot of data to comb through, assuming that you've got good knowledge managers and everything's categorized correctly, you've got tags and it's searchable. But as a project manager, and speaking as a PM, we're inherently lazy. We're really busy people. So I'm going to do a couple searches. Okay, I'm doing this kind of project. What is there? And maybe I'll find something, maybe I won't. What we want to do with Smart Lessons Learned is we want to use the same kind of AI that we use for our risk generator, and we want to teach that all of our past project lesson learned data. And so imagine yourself, I've got a new project. I have a project description. This is my project. Here's the scope. Here are the deliverables. Maybe I upload my charter or project initiation document, whatever I call it, my PID. And the AI is able to look at this and match that with previous projects lessons learned and come back to me with a list, kind of like what I showed you with my risk, and say, okay, here are all the lessons learned. And I can look at it as a human and use my judgment. And I can say, okay, here is a lesson learned from a project where they said, if you order supplies from this supplier and it's coming from overseas, give yourself 5 more weeks. Oh, I'm going to turn that into an action. Here's the next one. On this project, we had a problem with this, with this. Oh, okay, well, that's going to be a risk. Swipe it over. Here's something we're going to have to decide on this. We hadn't thought of that. That's going to have to be a good decision point for us. And so you could, ideally, with the right machine learning model, you could bring in intelligently these lessons learned. And as a user, I can go, yes, yes, no, no, action item, decision. And when I'm done with that process, now I've already seeded my RAID log with action items, risks, and decisions, and maybe some other things that I need to take forward and I very easily bring into my project and learn from past projects. From our perspective, this next level that I mentioned where the AI is looking and knows everything, and knows your emails, it knows your Slacks, and somehow is going to be intelligently, giving you recommendations or what it's finding online. This monitoring news wires and feeds and things like this. Maybe someday, but we just see so much barrier to entry for giving somebody that much access to all your data. We don't see it anytime soon. I don't know if we'll ever see it. So that's not something we're pursuing or really honestly too interested in pursuing at this point. And so that is a little bit about what we're doing with the tool. And as I said, I talked a little bit about the tool and gave you kind of a peek into our thought process around using AI for the tool, just to let you know what a startup is thinking about and how we're using that to help with the project management aspects of knowledge management. So I'll stop there and say, what do you guys think? I'd look forward to some feedback. You guys are, in this knowledge management game, and we are too. We didn't know it until Bill reached out to me, but we're absolutely, that's a lot of what we do. So.
And please feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. Well, while people are thinking, Kim, I got to say, I love that because, well, what I love is the idea, Tara can probably attest to this too. I've been to so many lessons learned briefings, and we sit down and we take good notes and we try to capture stuff. First of all, I got to tell you, as a project manager, before I put in the RAID log stuff, we would have lessons learned, and I would try to go back and think about what decisions I made and what actions I took. But if I'm on a 3-month, 6-month project, my memory's faulty. And I don't remember all the major events. And it's almost like keeping a work journal. And that helped me a great deal with this. So the RAID stuff is like, oh yeah, that day where that occurred. Or where we thought something really small and then it escalated. So that's a good thing right there. But then with the lessons learned, we do the debriefs, and I do agile project management. So I know you know probably about retrospectives and such.
I do.
And retrospectives can be good, and you can capture a lot of great knowledge. But again, it's like everyone's excited, and then about 2 hours later, we kind of forgot what we were doing. And I just love the fact that if I can have access, and you're so right. So I've had projects where we go, okay, well, this is what they learned on that project, what they learned on that project. But you're right, it's just captured haphazardly. Even if we were using good knowledge management practices, it was captured haphazardly, and it was hard to search. And and Tara can probably attest to this because she deals a lot more with SharePoint than I do, and SharePoint can hide stuff just as well as it can show you stuff. So having something go through and read all those lessons learned and keep up with them, that would be great. So I love that aspect. And Tara's putting her thumb up on that. So anyone else here? Alexandra, Naran, I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name. Narayan. I mean, I know you're new to this, but there should be something that excites you here.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of exciting thing. I mean, I learned a lot from this meeting though, but the one point that kept me going is you mentioned about feeding data to the LLMs, right? So what happened if the data is poisoned? As in like when you feed too much data into the LLMs, there is a possibility that you might even feed unwanted risks or unwanted mitigations for the potential risks. So the AI, if it's trained on that, won't that defeat the purpose of the project manager, because that will become more hassle for him, right?
It is. And so a lot of that is, it's a question of how do we make sure we've got clean data? And the funny answer to that is actually you can use AI to do that. And so part of this is if we want to, let's say we've got within our system across all of our users, let's say we get to a point where we've got 1 million risks, right, in our database. And for users that would give us permission to anonymize that data and use that to teach a model, we would give them access to the resulting trained model. But how do we do that? How do we make sure we sterilize millions of records? And the interesting thing is that there are machine learning models or AI models specifically designed to sterilize data. And so what our thought process is right now is, well, if you can use that to sterilize data and make it non-project, non-person specific, then shouldn't you also be able to do that to verify the integrity of the data before you feed it into a model where you're teaching it?
Got it. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think in that perspective. Yeah, that's nice. I mean,
we were this has been a real learning curve for us. It's been really exciting. And that was, when we heard about that, we thought, wow, that makes it a lot easier, because we were sweating a lot of, we can't, even if we have permission from users to feed data into a model, it would only be on condition that data is truly made anonymous, because we can't, people put very sensitive data into risks. And, even when we have that capability, there's still going to be people that say, look, I don't care. This is my risk. I don't care about your model. I don't want my data there, and we will 100% respect that. But for those that say, you know what, I would like to be able to learn from others and they can learn from me, we have to give them something that we and they can be confident in is protecting their data. And so that will be something we'll be putting a lot of work into.
Great. Another thing I'm thinking of, because we got the other parts of the RAID log, so actions and decisions. And one of the things with knowledge management that is a selling point for us is that we can help you make better decisions because we can show you lessons from the past. And one thing I kind of thought about is with this, not just the risk, but also what actions were taken, what decisions predicated those actions. And it's almost kind of like if I could take the AI and go back and say, well, what if we made the decision on a different path? And what do you think would result from that? And I mean, that's, you know, and again, it's almost like science fiction, because they're like talking about alternate universes. So what if I made this decision this way about a product rather than that decision? You know, what would have resulted? And kind of being able to test those different scenarios is pretty cool, because in knowledge management, and you know, Tara and I, we talked about this, using scenario planning with knowledge management. And it's like your tool here would be a great way to test out those different scenarios.
And you know, we actually have it's kind of on the visionary part of our roadmap, but that's what we have in mind, is to do simulations. You know, in the project management world, we've got right now you can do statistical simulations that require a lot of data. They require you to have statistical knowledge, and you can run a Monte Carlo simulation and do all these kinds of things, but that's really inaccessible to the average project manager. And so with AI, we've got the ability to run some simulations. So we've got on the roadmap that kind of thing that we're calling it the machine learning assistant right now, just for lack of a better name, but it's something that would be able to connect to a large language model and also learn from what you've got going on, and then be proactive and give you recommendations. Say, hey, you know, you've got this risk you haven't looked at in a while, and it's a big deal, so you should look at that. Or you've got this decision, and here, I wanted to show this, is in our decision module. So here is a decision. We've got our Death Star, you know, our big space station out there, and maybe we want to put some short-range cannons in the trenches so this TIE fighter or X-Wings can't get there. And so what we have is, you know, we have this concept of like a T-chart. You know how you take a piece of legal paper and you make a big T and you say, okay, option 1, benefit drawback, option 2, benefit drawback. And so we have this idea of a T-chart. But wouldn't it be cool if when I create a decision, I document it, the AI can give me some more ideas? Maybe I've run out of, like, what else can we do about this? And it can give you ideas based on the large language model, or maybe past similar decisions in other projects. And it can maybe give you a little more information on this. And then the envision here is that we would have maybe even a tab here that once I have it build out my options, is I can click here and say analysis, and it can go back and say, why is it recommending these? Or what does it think are some benefits and drawbacks? And so we can start pulling on that, again, from data from my current projects and also the large language model, pull that all together, and I've got an assistant.
And I like that. You know, I was just thinking too that, you know, if we got a lot of projects running in the organization and we're dumping in knowledge management, you know, nuggets each night from the projects, the different risks. And, you know, we basically have the machine go through and look at the latest updates of the RAID logs and look at them and keep adding to them. So at some point, someone might have run into a problem we were facing now, but they ran into it 2 weeks earlier and they got a good, you know, thing on it. I mean, it's a nice thing with knowledge management is it does take time to collect those knowledge nuggets and put them into action. And, you know, there's a whole cycle. And if any way we can reduce the cycle amount and get that knowledge out faster and let us help us make better decisions, I like that a lot.
Yeah, when I had the first time that I was a PMO manager, I was so happy. I was so excited. I was going to have the best PMO in the world. And it wasn't because of me. It's actually had some amazing project managers in there. But I made it, man, I'm not optional. Everyone is going to do lessons learned. I want lessons learned to go in the library. I think I even used SharePoint. I said lessons learned are going to go there. And I made sure, and I made it happen, and they never got used. And so we had the library, but I couldn't get people to use it because they're like, I don't want to go search that thing. You know, I'll never find anything. And a little story about the value of this kind of knowledge. I was working with a consultancy, and we were working with a large petroleum company, and we were doing a project to migrate their email from on-premise to the cloud. I did a lot of that with this organization, and the value of this project was well into the tens of millions of dollars. And we had put together a proposal, had done a lot of analysis, we'd done pre-projects, and they were getting ready to sign on the line to start this, you know, this huge project. And before they did, the CIO stopped and said, look, I need to understand what can go wrong with this. Tell me what can go wrong with this. And not until I understand it am I going to put pen on paper. And so that was my job. You go talk to this guy and figure it out. So what I did was I had to manually go back to all of the past risk registers that I could find, and not all of them, not a lot of our big projects had them, but I picked all the ones that I could find. I interviewed our past architects and built out basically a massive risk log. And then I went through and did analysis to look at, okay, what happened to these risks? How to respond? How did it turn out? And it took weeks to put this thing together. And I kept thinking, this should be one click. This should be one click. But we put together this massive document, did an analysis on it, said, look, here's the typical problems you're going to have with this kind of a project. And then here's what we're going to do about it. And then here is the residual risk at the end of that. And we're able to plot that on a heat map. So we could say on a heat map, and that's 2 dimensions, we're kind of in the upright, high probability, high impact, low left corner, bottom corner is low probability, low impact. When we plotted all the risks, there was a lot up in that that high impact corner. And then we're able to demonstrate, look, we have proven with risks on other projects that we can take them from this corner and move them down to this corner. And with that presentation, the CIO said, I flew to London and presented to the CIO. And because we had the data to back it up from our past risk and issue registers, we could address all their talking points. At the end of the meeting, he said, okay, we're good to go. And we're able to do that based on historical knowledge that we were able to leverage.
Wow, that is great. Okay, folks, don't let me monopolize the conversation here. Anyone else have any questions, any comments?
If you don't interrupt me, I'm just going to keep going here.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I was talking about for questions. Yeah, if you guys don't ask me questions, I'm just going to keep talking.
Tara?
Yeah, no, I was just AI is one of those things that if you work for the government, you already see all the limitations that you're going to have as far as getting the data out there and having access to having something else access your data. And as you were talking about having it read my email, I was like, ugh. It's just like those chills. So it's a whole new way of looking at things, and but it's also very powerful. So I'm not really asking anything. I'm just kind of commenting because we really do have to think about how we're going to use this powerful tool. And we should really be thinking about the rules and how we're going to control it, so it doesn't control us. And actually, I'm gonna lapse into a Terminator reference, so I'm gonna stop. It's very exciting stuff, and I appreciate your demonstration because I was thinking, I don't know, how would I use AI? I just think of how I can't use it.
And yeah, so. Tara, you bring up a great point there because we're going to have a future speaker, and I invite you to come back, Kim, if you like. We're actually talking about knowledge management ethics. And now that it's kind of easier to capture knowledge, like from emails and such, now we got to talk about the ethical implications.
That sounds like a really interesting talk.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way about Tara. I was talking to this guy, and he was telling me about, oh yeah, it can identify risks without you even trying by monitoring everything you do. Like, I don't think I want that. I really don't. Narayana, did you come off mute there for a second?
No. No, I was just wondering how many debates we'll have when we bring in knowledge management and ethics. So because there will be different points of view, right? So I was just thinking about that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the rise of AI is obviously it has many opposing views, as in, like, as Tara mentioned about reading emails and stuff, but I mean, the technology is already out there, right? It's already grown. So it's the only good thing that we can do about it is we have to adapt to it and we have to go about it. You can't be like, I'm not willing to share my emails, or I'm not willing to share my privacy data. So we have to be aware that it is going to go, it is already out there. So we just need to make ourselves more aware of it.
It really is. I mentioned I do a lot of coaching and mentoring for my PM Happy Hour members, and I was chatting with one of them. She is looking for a job currently, and she told me she's having a hard time because she says AIs are triaging, they're filtering out her resume. And I was a little surprised by that, but then I also wasn't surprised that a lot of organizations are already using AI to do things like do pre-qualification on resumes and things like that. So, you know, I none of us likes the idea of an AI reading our emails or monitoring our chats, but I guess the legal reality is most of our organizations have the legal right to monitor communications, and if they can monitor your communications, I don't know that there's anything preventing them from putting it through an AI.
I just got the chills again. Okay. Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes. I would, if anybody would like to share, I would love to hear if any of you are using other AI products, even if it's something as simple as ChatGPT, and I'd be curious to hear what you're doing with those and how you're finding it.
So I'm actually using ChatGPT on occasional basis for completing my mails. So I'll write a piece of conversation, then I'll be like, make it more professional or make it a little sassy. So something like
that. I like it. It's cool.
And I've been using this tool called Midjourney as well. So that is just used to create an image from a prompt. So that has been really game changing. Previously, I used to like sit and edit pictures, but now I just give it a prompt stating that just make it a vacation. So just does it within minutes. So that's like saves me a lot of time. So yeah.
What I've been seeing an explosion in myself is training and development folks using it to create courses and training plans and all that. And I'll be honest, I experiment with it, but I have this, like I had created a leadership development course for me. I had it as a test, and it was fine. It just was not, it just ran like every course I've seen out there. And we have a phrase in the industry, canned courses. And it felt like I pulled a canned course off the shelf, and here you are, here's your leadership development course, which is like everyone else's. So that's the thing about the large language models. I mean, it's pulling from all these different sources. You're training it on things, but it's an amalgamation of things that it came before. So it's still the creativity I'm not finding, which is fine. And then if you realize the limitations that way, because I have some folks that they took, they say, oh, I can create my PowerPoint presentations for me for my training. And it does. And then I look at them and like, well, they look nice. And yeah, you got the nice images, but it's pretty much the same course I've seen 100 times across the internet. It's like I went to Google and said, show me a training course on leadership. And I just grabbed one. Yeah. So I've used it for that. I think the thing I find is that it's a good idea starter. Like a friend and I, we were trying to figure out a talk for a training presentation conference next year. And we had to generate 30 titles for us based on our talk description. And the funny thing is it did some great jobs with the 30 titles, but we ended up coming up with our own based on what we saw. So we didn't use any of the 30 titles, but it helps spur our thinking.
I tried to get ChatGPT to write jokes, and it did a miserable job. But there was, of all the ones I had to do, there was one that was almost good, and I tweaked a little bit, and it was project management is like training overly caffeinated squirrels during a fireworks show. That's as good as it could get.
Yeah, that's not bad though.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm like, okay, that's really good.
I was thinking of over the hedge.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
equate it to a movie, right?
Uh-huh.
The squirrel that's just completely high on caffeine, and when he moves, time stands still. He's so fast. But yeah, no, that's a good analogy. Cool.
Mhm. So what I like about it is I think, and this is why I wanted you to come and talk to us about this for knowledge management, because like I said, your tool, your RAID log is great for the knowledge management piece. I know you haven't taken it that way, but you're seeing it more and more. And we're seeing it, like Tara and I have seen it work really nicely for it. And just the ability to not just capture what we learned in the past, but be able to package it and use it to guide decision making now. Because, and Tara, disagree with if you want, but isn't that the ultimate goal of knowledge management, is to help us make better decisions in the future based on the lessons from the past?
Yeah, and I'm really glad when you reached out to me for the first talk, because as I said, I never thought of this as knowledge management, but it 100% absolutely is, and it's really helped me think about it in different terms. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Bill, I think that is definitely one of the goals of knowledge management. But I always say that it's another goal of knowledge management is to prevent infobesity. And so, because I love that word and it catches people's attention. It's like, wait a minute, obesity. Yeah. It's having too much information that you can't process it. So how can you make a decision using the glut of information? So it definitely, once you hear about it, it's like, yes, that is infobesity. So knowledge management helps with that. Okay, I can stop talking now because infobesity. Anyway.
So just want to keep an eye on our time. We've got 3 more minutes left, sir. And do you have any final thoughts for us? Any comments?
Final thoughts. Well, I think it's this, is that, kind of, we've been doing, you can see a lot of thought around AI and where it's going to go. What are the right ways to leverage it to give value? And, I think there's a lot of potential here in this technology. I struggle with, exactly as you pointed out, relying on it too much. I worry a little bit about losing creativity. So when we first built this feature that I showed you, the AI risk generator, we literally stopped and had a conference in our whole team where we said, should we be doing this? And the concern is, if we make it so easy that a project manager can create risks, and we've done this in our tests, we would present the risks for a project to somebody else, a project manager we knew who was running a project, and said, what do you think of these risks? What percentage of your risk management does this do? And we're getting feedback like, oh yeah, 75%, 80% of the risks that you've generated, that pretty much overlaps. So we were thinking, look, if you can click a button once and get 75% of your risks, are we going to make it too easy for project managers? Are they going to just click the button, say, okay, I'm done, and walk away without even really thinking about it, or even saying which of these are really going to apply? Or the idea is this helps you start the process, it gives you recommendations. Are they just going to be lazy and walk away? And we're still really concerned about that. But we think that the benefits outweigh that risk. And so we are trying really hard to educate and try to make it so that we make it really clear to say, this is the idea, is this helps you, this is your assistant, this is not should not be making decisions for you or for your project. This is meant to help you. And so for us, this is kind of our moral conscience that we're going ahead with, is how do we make sure that we help project managers, our customers, with AI? And I think other industries are going to be struggling with this as well, as how do we do this in a way that helps people, helps them make better decisions and do a better job and focus on the really important things that they need to focus on, without making them so lazy that they're just going to do it and walk away, and it's going to cause problems.
That's a great thought. Thank you. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. So Tara, anything you want to announce? Anything you want to say? And again, we want to thank you a lot, Kim. Thank you for coming up and showing this to us. This is really a cool tool. I'm wanting to see how I can get a hold of that myself. And Tara, do you have anything to add?
Just thank you, Kim. That was great. Definitely got me thinking now. And just want to make sure everybody knows that we have our 10th anniversary meeting next month. I hope we see everybody there. And thank you, Kim. Appreciate you coming back. Have a great one.
I'm so happy. Thank you, Bill and Tara and everybody else for having me back again. Love you. You guys do some really amazing things, and I learned a lot speaking here. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great, great. So everyone have a good evening, and this will be up on YouTube once I get the recording to Tara and we get it all edited and everything. So it should be up in about a week or so. All right. Thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you for our first time attendees. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, I'm going to shut off the recording now.
Thank you for watching KMCDC's presentation. Hope to see you at the next monthly meeting.